some of you, you may just like Monica's tone better, right? Or you just might like her catalog better. Brandy and Monica, even though they're both considered R&B, they kind of have slightly different catalogs. Like Monica kind of stayed really true to the R&B soul vibe, where Brandy kind of went, she was more R&B pop, right? So even though they're in the same genre, they kind of are on different, oh my gosh, why can't my words come to me today? I don't want to say they're polar opposites because they're not, but they're on different sides a little bit. They're not as close together as one would think. So that's the first thing we have to think about. But the main thing I want to talk about is the fact that what I'm noticing is, okay, so I've seen people say, well, Monica's a better singer than Brandy because Brandy's voice is so raspy and she doesn't have good chord closure. I've heard voice teachers say that because Brandy doesn't have good chord closure, that makes Monica a better singer. And so what are we looking for when we look for good singing? When we think about good singing, is chord closure part of it? Yes. But the other things that we look at when we think about good singing is where does this person place their voice, and is it consistent, right? I always talk about that. Like, what is the mark of a great voice? Is the voice, and let me just say this, when I was younger, I loved Monica and Brandy, but I definitely thought Monica was the better singer because Monica kind of modeled what a lot of 90s singers in the 90s had. So if you go up around In Vogue, H-Town, SWV, Casey and JoJo, Patti LaBelle, Deborah Cox, Whitney Houston, everybody was hollering, right? Everybody was hollering. So, Monica kind of came out and she was kind of doing what all the other R&B divas were doing. They was hollering. And then Brandy kind of just had like this little whispery thing. And I was just like, she ain't doing nothing, So I preferred Monica for that reason because the aesthetic kind of matched the passion and the grit of what I thought an R&B soul artist should have. So that was just the aesthetic that I had at the time. It took probably until Full Moon to come out for me to look back at Brandy as a 14-year-old and realize that she was way ahead of her time as a singer at 14 versus Monica, who was kind of really right. She was bam smack in her time in the 90s, if that makes sense. What Brandy was doing, she just had a different tone. It was a softer tone, which doesn't make having a soft voice can't be the litmus as to whether or not a person is a good singer or a bad singer. And it definitely can't be the gauge with that we use to measure whether one instrument is better than another. Think of it this way. Is a trombone better than a flute because the trombone is louder? No. So you have to swipe that off. That's not how we measure skill. We can't measure skill by just the sheer volume. That's not how we measure skill. So how do we measure? We measure skill. Okay, cool. The trombone is loud. The flute is a little bit softer. The flute player, how long are they able to hold out a phrase? Are they literally singing like 10, 15-second phrases? Yes. Are they able to do that over and over and over again? Yes. Are they able to end phrases on a high note after using all that air for 10, 15 seconds? Yes. When the flute player is singing, are they going, ooh, 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 or is it, ooh, is it steady, consistent? These are the things that we listen for when we listen for skill. Does it sound erratic or does it sound smooth? Right? And then, okay, cool. So it sounds smooth. Does it sound smooth when it's soft? Does it sound smooth when it's medium loud? Doesn't sound smooth when it's loud. If it sounds smooth when it's soft, medium, loud, and loud, okay, now we have something, because this person is showing range, a dynamic contrast, consistency through dynamic contrast, an ability to control dynamic contrast. Those are the things that is what we, that's when we say, holy crap, this person's softs are super smooth. They don't sound like they dropping out. Their vibrato doesn't sound, you don't hear none of that going on. When they're loud, it's not going sharp. It's not going flat. It's consistent. Like, they make it sound easy to listen to. Like, it's pleasant to listen to. Like, I would never know that they had to practice 10 hours a day to make that sound easy. That is what the mark of skill is. Whereas some people, that's not your aesthetic. You like when singing sounds hard. You like when people are sweating and singing. You like the ugly faces. You like the crouching down. You like when it's slightly flat. You like that Mary J. Blige kind of vibe, that, you like that. So skill might not be your aesthetic. You might just not like that. That might not appeal to you because they make it look too easy. They make it look too nonchalant. So you feel like you can't feel them, right? But that's your personal taste, right? That doesn't mean that person has more skill. You just like, that's just what you like. Okay? But that doesn't mean, but just know that what you like isn't necessarily the highest level of, is not the highest level of skill, right? What else was I going to say? So now we go to pacing. How does this person pace? Okay, cool. So they can get through like a really cool passage, or they can sing really strong for a minute. Okay, then what are they going to do next? What does that person do next? I think that is the mark of a skilled singer, is knowing how to pace from one song to the next, from one part of the song to the next, how they are going to approach it so it doesn't fall off the rails, if that makes sense. So, so now let's talk about placement of ad-libs, right? When we're talking about placement of ad-libs, if the song, let's say the song has finally risen to a 10. And so now all of our ad-libs are basically, let's say the song is like moving along here, and now your vocals, I see shapes when I see singing. So let's say your song is floating here, and now your vocals are, everything is up here, right? How do you manage that? How do you still continue to make that sound easy? Are you going to like constantly drop out? Are you just kind of holding one note at a time? Is that all you can handle? Or are you literally moving all over the place? Which do you think is going to take more skill? The person that just holds out that one note, or the person that at a high level of intensity is able to move more? Why are we so enamored by Simone Biles? Because she mixes power with agility. Power and agility is a much higher skill level than only being powerful or only having agility. So when you combine those two, now you have somebody with a super high level of skill. And not a lot of people can do that. So you have those people that, they're just those big one note holders. And that is a gift. I will say that's talent. That's a gift. That's something they're born with. They may have gone to voice lessons for it. They may not. Some people just born hollering, and that's fine. But when you can literally move your voice around and do all of that, that's a skill. That's a skill set that has been practiced and that has been honed in on. And that takes time. That takes dedication. And then for you to be able to kind of dance and play with all your background vocals and all of the chording to see, okay, even within your ad-libs, you take vocal breaks. You're still singing, but you're kind of taking a break because you're planning for your next big passage. These are things that take skill. Make sense? Whereas, again, you have the Mary J. Blige style where you're just, where it's like it's not really a distinct ending to the phrase. It doesn't really matter. It may be flat, it may be sharp, it may growl, it may not growl. None of that matters because we're just with her and we love her and whatever. So I guess what I was just trying to say on here is, oh, okay, and let me address the whole raspy thing. Let's address that because this is how I see it. When somebody, first of all, I think Brandy's placement is amazing. I would love to see a scope of her chords because I would love to see how much her chords are actually closing. And I say that because when somebody has a technique issue, but their voice is, they still have such a high level of agility. They still have a high level of vocal endurance. They still have a high level of vocal control. That actually is just a reflection of how skilled that singer really is. Does that make sense? When people sing really well in spite of vocal faults, that actually shows how gifted they really are, because another person with that vocal fault would have experienced limitations. They wouldn't be able to sing as high. They wouldn't be able to sing as strong. They wouldn't be able to be as agile because of that vocal fault, because of the raspiness, because their voice might not be as forward. So when somebody brings that up as a way to compare one singer to the next because the other singer might have a clearer tone, but that person still has the agility, the power, and everything else, all you're doing is highlighting how much more skilled that other singer is. I think that was everything that was on my heart. I don't know if you guys had questions. I'll look and see if y'all had questions. Really miss you, baby. I don't think anybody had any questions. I think you guys were just chit-chatting, which is fine. But yeah, you know, I personally love them both. I think it's really clear who the more skilled singer is. You know, Brandy is one of the greatest voices of our time. To be totally honest with you, she just is, because she just embodies. When you really think about the fact that I was talking to somebody else, between 1995 and 2001, this woman went through, she was a teenager and she went through such an evolution in her own vocal identity. And 20 years later, you have people still trying to catch up with who she was 20 years ago. That says a lot about what that person has brought to the vocal world and what they've contributed in the legacy that they're leaving. And it's not to take anything away from Monica. Monica she's had an amazing career. She has a fantastic catalog. She's a superstar in her own right, you know. But when it comes to like literally who is a skilled, flat-footed singer, I feel like apples to apples. I think if you sat them in the room with the same vocal trainer, I think Brandy would have still walked away with the one with more talent. Monica has a beautiful voice. Monica has a beautiful tone. Monica is a beautiful woman. She has beautiful songs. She's great. She's had an amazing career. So this versus, I just want y'all to know, is not about who's a better singer, because I think it's like really clear who the better singer is. The verses, first of all, it's just about celebrating two Black successful women. I really